Have you ever been told how to live inside your own home? That question still burns in my mind, because the day it happened, I realized some lessons don't come from teachers. They come from betrayal. After my husband passed away, the silence in this house became louder than ever. The walls that once heard laughter now echoed only footsteps and memories. I'd sit in the kitchen for hours, staring at the cup he used to drink from, pretending he'd just gone out for a walk. Sometimes I'd even set an extra plate at dinner, then sigh and put it away before the tears came. That's how grief works. It makes you do strange things to feel less alone. That morning, I was washing dishes that weren't even dirty. My hands had become used to cleaning things that didn't need cleaning. It was my way of keeping control, or maybe pretending life hadn't completely fallen apart. I didn't hear the door at first. Then, click! The lock turned. My heart jumped. No one had used that key since my husband died. For a second I thought maybe it was him. I know that sounds crazy, but grief plays tricks on the mind. Then I heard the voice. My son's. The one I gave everything for. But his tone wasn't warm. It wasn't my boy's voice. It was cold, firm, the kind of voice people use when they've already made a decision you won't like. And then I saw her. The woman behind him. His wife. Perfect posture, expensive purse, expression full of polite superiority. She looked around my home like it was some sort of inspection. Her perfume was heavy, suffocating, the kind that tries to prove something. I still had my apron on. My hands were wet from the sink. I smiled out of habit, though something deep inside already felt wrong. They walked in without even waiting for me to say welcome. The bags hit the floor, right on my favorite rug, the one I bought after my first bonus 25 years ago. I wanted to tell them to lift them up, to respect what I'd built, but my voice froze somewhere in my throat. Lucas said, "Mom, we need to talk." I nodded. My heart was already racing. Then she spoke. She said something like, "I'll be helping you from now on, teaching you how to manage the house properly." I blinked. Teaching me? For a moment, I thought I misheard her. I even laughed softly, the kind of laugh that slips out when disbelief is too heavy to hold inside. Ha! Teaching me. Inside my head, memories flashed. Me scrubbing stairs at midnight to pay for Lucas's school. Me standing in line for rationed groceries when we barely had enough for rent. Me sewing curtains at 3 a.m. just to make this house feel like a home. And now, this woman, who probably never worked a day without an air conditioner, stood in front of me saying she'd teach me how to run my own house. My house. The house I built, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. She kept talking, moving her hands around like she was some expert on life. Every word she said was another nail in my patience. Lucas just stood beside her, eyes on the floor, silent. My son. The one who used to defend me from neighborhood bullies now couldn't defend me from his own wife's disrespect. My smile started to fade. My lips trembled, but I held it together. I told myself not to shout, not to cry, not to let them see they were breaking me, but inside I was screaming. My heart was pounding so loud I thought they could hear it, and then it happened. She sighed like I was a child who just didn't understand, tilted her head, said something about how women of your generation never learned proper organization. Oh, that sting, that humiliation, that pity disguised as kindness. It burned through my chest like fire. I wanted to laugh, to cry, to throw her out all at once, but instead I just looked her straight in the eye. For the first time in my life, my silence was louder than any shout, and maybe she didn't like that, because suddenly she lifted her hand, holding that purse, as if she was about to strike me. It happened so fast, like lightning. I froze, but not from fear, from disbelief. I stared into her eyes, and something in my gaze must have stopped her. She froze mid-air. Her hand trembled, her lips parted, but no words came out. Lucas finally looked up, but still said nothing. My son, my heart, the boy I raised alone when his father worked night shifts. The boy who once hugged me after every scraped knee. The same boy stood there watching a stranger almost hit me and said nothing. I wanted to collapse, to scream, to ask him why, but all I could do was laugh. A broken, bitter laugh that sounded like it came from somewhere deep in my stomach. Ha! Teach me! In my house? The air felt heavy after that. You could slice the tension with a knife? The woman slowly lowered her hand. Lucas swallowed hard. No one dared to move. Then they turned, walked out. The door slammed behind them so hard the walls shook. And suddenly, I was alone again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one was heavier, thicker, the kind that wraps around your throat. I sat on the sofa, staring at the spot where they'd been standing, the bags, the rug, the still swinging curtain by the window. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from fury. From fury. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh again, maybe both. I touched the armrest, the same sofa I'd saved for months to buy, and I whispered, "They think I'm weak." That night, I kept hearing that sound, the purse halfway through the air, Lucas's silence, my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. It was that the person who was supposed to protect me stood beside the one who tried to humiliate me. I thought losing my husband was the worst pain life could give me. But that night, I learned something crueler. Death only takes the dead away. The living? They can hurt you again and again and look you in the eye while doing it. Sigh! I sat by the window until morning, watching the sun climb over the same street I'd swept clean for 30 years. And for the first time, the warmth didn't feel comforting. It felt like a warning, because somewhere inside I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. They thought they'd come to teach me a lesson, but what they didn't know was that the lesson had just begun, and it wasn't for me. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a heart that felt 50 pounds heavier. I hadn't slept a minute. My mind kept replaying that moment, her hand in the air, Lucas looking down, my laughter that didn't sound like mine. I pressed my palms to my eyes and whispered, "Why did this happen? Why did he let it happen?" The house felt colder that day. The same rooms, the same furniture, but everything seemed different, like their shadows were still here. I went to the kitchen and boiled water for tea, but when I poured it, my hands trembled. I spilled half of it on the counter. "Get a grip," I muttered. "You faced worse." But had I? I'd faced poverty, loss, loneliness, but never humiliation like this. Never from my own child. I sat down at the table, holding the cup close to my chest. The smell of tea usually comforted me, but that morning it only reminded me of every meal I'd cooked for my son. All those mornings when he was small, when he used to wake up late and I'd rush to make him breakfast before school. He'd smile, sleepy-eyed, and say, "You're the best, Mom." Sigh. When did that voice disappear? When did "you're the best" turn into "we need to talk"? I stared at the empty chair across from me. That was where his father used to sit. That man, he wasn't perfect, but he was loyal. He used to say, "Patricia, a home stands not because of bricks, but because of respect, respect, respect." The same thing that was ripped from me yesterday. I walked to the living room and looked around. My eyes landed on the rug again, the one they threw their bags on. It used to be my pride, a symbol of my small victories. Now it looked like a reminder of how little my sacrifices meant to them. I knelt down and touched it, feeling the soft threads under my fingers. My throat tightened. "This home, this life, I built all of it," I whispered. Every single corner of this place carried a piece of me. The kitchen smelled like burnt toast and hard work. The living room walls still held the faint mark from when Lucas was 5 and scribbled with crayons. The window curtains, stitched by my hands, had faded from sun and years. This wasn't just a house, it was my history. And yesterday someone walked in and treated it like a lesson plan. That thought made me laugh, a bitter, shaky laugh. "Ha ha ha. Teach me?" I muttered under my breath. Maybe she should learn how to respect first. But behind that laugh, there was something else. A sting. Because deep down, I wasn't just angry at her. I was angry at him, my son. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look at me properly. The more I thought about it, the more my chest hurt. That's when the memories started flooding in. Those small moments that I had brushed aside back then, thinking they didn't mean much. The missed birthdays, the canceled dinners, the short phone calls. How many times had he said, "Sorry, Mom, next time"? And how many times had I believed him? It wasn't just yesterday that he chose her over me. He'd been choosing her for a long time. I remember once, before my husband died, I made Lucas his favorite dish, roast chicken and mashed potatoes. He promised he'd come. I spent the whole afternoon cooking, setting the table with our best plates. He never showed up. I called, no answer. Later that night, he texted, something came up. I told myself, he's busy, it's okay, but I still cried that night, quietly. So his father wouldn't see. And then Christmas came. His father was sick then, weak but hopeful. We both waited, watching the clock. I even lit candles. 8 o'clock passed. 9, 10. He never came. The next morning, he sent a message. "Sorry, Mom. Dinner with Victoria's family ran late. I forgave him every time." Because that's what mothers do, right? We keep forgiving until there's nothing left of us to forgive. Yesterday just made it official. He wasn't mine anymore. He was hers. I looked out the window. Outside, kids were playing on the street. I smiled faintly, remembering when Lucas used to play like that. Scratched knees, dusty hair, laughter echoing through the street. I'd yell from the balcony, "Lunch is ready!" and he'd run up, hungry and happy. Now he comes to my house to tell me I need to learn how to live. I leaned back and closed my eyes. My chest ached in that dull, heavy way grief feels, not sharp, not sudden, just heavy. I whispered, maybe I failed somewhere. Maybe I gave him too much. Maybe I made him believe love means never saying no. I stood up, walked to the mirror in the hallway, and stared at myself. Wrinkled eyes, tired face, but still the same woman who had survived everything. I raised my chin. No more letting anyone make you feel small, because deep down, anger had started replacing sadness, a quiet, steady anger. The kind that doesn't explode, it grows. All day I replayed that moment, the purse mid-air, my laugh, her shock. That woman thought I'd crumble, she thought I'd beg. But what she didn't know was that I've already lived through worse storms. When you've lost a husband, poverty, and nights without sleep, one arrogant girl can't scare you. Still, my heart whispered, Lucas, because no matter what, he was still my son. And that made the pain worse. I thought about calling him just to ask why. But pride stopped me. I wasn't going to chase anyone who thought I needed lessons in my own home. The sun went down. I didn't turn on the lights. I liked the darkness. It matched how I felt. I sat on the sofa and listened to the ticking clock. Every tick was like a reminder of how time moves on. With or without your children beside you. Hours passed. Somewhere deep inside, I started making a silent promise to myself. If they come back, I won't cry again. I'll be ready, because people like her, they don't just stop, they always come back to see if they can win again. So I waited. I cleaned the kitchen, I folded laundry, I made everything spotless. Not for them. To remind myself that I still owned every inch of this house, and no one could take that from me. By midnight, the anger had cooled into determination. I smiled faintly at my reflection in the window, tired, yes, but strong. I whispered to the empty room, if she wants to teach me, she'll get her first lesson soon. Because next time she walks through that door, she won't find the same woman she tried to humiliate. She'll find the one ready to fight back. The third morning after that fight, I woke up to the sound of birds outside. It should have been peaceful, but it wasn't. My chest felt tight, heavy. It's strange. When you've lived with pain long enough, even silence starts to feel like a punishment. I sat up slowly, rubbed my eyes, and whispered to myself, "You're stronger than this." But deep down, I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow, like someone had carved something out of me and left me half alive. I made tea again, because that's what I do when I don't know what else to do. The kettle hissed and the steam fogged up my glasses. I stared at the steam and thought, this is what grief looks like. It rises, fades, and disappears before you can hold it. I sat by the window, sipping tea that had already gone cold, when my mind replayed it again, that moment. Her hand in the air, my body frozen. The weight of 30 years of love crumbling in a single heartbeat. I can still hear the sound of her bracelet jingling when she lifted her purse, sharp, metallic, cruel, and Lucas, my son, my own blood, just stood there. His eyes darted away like he couldn't bear to watch, but he didn't stop her either. That image, his silence, it's what haunts me the most. I remember the way I laughed that day. It wasn't a happy laugh. It wasn't even human, I think. It was the kind of sound you make when your soul doesn't know whether to scream or cry. That laugh, it scared her. Maybe that's why she froze. I don't know what she saw in my eyes. Maybe years of exhaustion, maybe quiet madness, maybe the ghosts of every sacrifice I'd ever made. Her hand stopped mid-air, trembling slightly, the purse still dangling. And I stood there, staring right back, not blinking, not even once. That moment stretched like an eternity. Two women, one full of arrogance, one full of pain, both refusing to back down. Then she lowered her hand. Her cheeks flushed red, not with shame, but with rage. I could feel the heat of her anger even from across the room. Lucas shifted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mom," but I didn't answer. Because sometimes silence speaks louder than any words. When they walked out that day, I thought maybe she'd feel guilty. Maybe Lucas would call, apologize, say something that would make it hurt less. But days passed. Nothing. Just silence. Every night I'd check my phone, hoping to see his name flash on the screen. Nothing. I'd tell myself, maybe tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. The longer I waited, the angrier I became. Not just at her, not just at him, but at myself. When did I stop being the mother who demanded respect and start being the woman who begged for attention? I'd walk around the house, touching furniture like it could talk back to me. The old wooden table, the photo frames, the half-empty closet. Everything had a story, a piece of me. And now it all felt like evidence of a crime I didn't commit. Sometimes I'd laugh out of nowhere. Ha! The neighbors must have thought I was losing my mind. But that's what pain does. It pushes laughter and tears out of the same place. One evening, as the sky turned pink, I stood by the window again. I saw a couple walking down the street, hand in hand, whispering, smiling. My throat tightened, not because I was jealous, but because once that was me and my husband. Once I had that peace. Now I had four walls, a roof, and silence. But as much as it hurt, something inside me began to change. The pain wasn't numbing me anymore. It was sharpening me. I started noticing things I hadn't before. How strong my hands still were, how firm my voice could sound when I spoke to the neighbor's kid, how my back, even after years of cleaning and scrubbing, still stood straight. Maybe I wasn't weak. Maybe I'd just forgotten how strong I used to be. That thought gave me a strange kind of strength, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need anyone's permission. That night, I pulled out an old album, the one with Lucas's baby pictures. There he was, my little boy, missing teeth, smiling with ice cream all over his face. I traced his cheek in the photo with my finger. "Where are you, my child?" I whispered. "Where did you go?" I wiped my tears and flipped another page. Lucas on his graduation day. Lucas hugging me tight and saying, "Everything I am is because of you, Mom." Sigh that boy. That version of him still lived somewhere inside the man who broke my heart. I had to believe that. I needed to believe that. Because if I didn't, then everything I'd done, everything I'd sacrificed, meant nothing. That night, when I went to bed, I couldn't sleep again. My mind wouldn't stop spinning. Every creak in the house made me sit up. Every shadow made me wonder if someone was at the door. The air felt heavier, like the world was holding its breath. And then, a sound. A car. Slow, heavy, familiar. I froze. Could it be? The footsteps came closer. A pause. And then, the sound of the gate creaking. I didn't move. My chest was pounding. I waited, half afraid, half hopeful. And then, a knock. Just once. But something inside whispered, "Wait," because this time I wasn't going to greet them with tears or tea. If it was Lucas, if he had come back, he wouldn't find the same mother he left behind. The door knocked again, louder. I took a deep breath. But before I turned it, I smiled to myself, a calm, steady smile. Because no matter what was waiting on the other side, I wasn't afraid anymore. They left my house thinking I was broken. But they forgot. Broken things can cut the deepest when you try to pick them up again. The knock on the door that night wasn't him, just the wind. Sigh. I don't know why I even hoped. Maybe because hope is the cruelest habit of all. It doesn't die even when everything else does. That night, I sat by the door longer than I'd like to admit. I kept thinking about the sound of his footsteps, how well I knew them. As a mother, you can tell your child's steps from miles away, the weight, the rhythm, the way they pause. I used to recognize Lucas's walk even when he was small and coming home from school. I'd open the door before he could even knock. But now, he didn't even try. I leaned my head against the wall and closed my eyes. The memories came like waves. His first birthday. I remember staying up all night, baking a cake with no oven, just a small stove and pure love. It was crooked, uneven, but he clapped and shouted, "Mama made cake!" His laughter filled the whole room. His teenage years, the arguments, the slammed doors, the apologies after. And then that first day, he left for college. He hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would break. He said, "Don't cry, Mom. I'll visit every weekend." I smiled that day too, pretending to believe it. But deep down, I knew distance doesn't just live in miles. It lives in hearts that forget where home is. When did he start forgetting? I opened the photo album again. I don't know why I keep doing that to myself. Maybe because sometimes pain feels better than emptiness. Each photo was a reminder of who we used to be, mother and son, not strangers separated by pride and a woman's influence. There was one picture that broke me. His wedding day. The day I thought I was gaining a daughter. I remember that morning, how nervous I was, how happy he looked. I even fixed her veil, smiling through tears. She called me Mom that day. I thought she meant it. But now when I look at that picture, all I see is warning signs I ignored. Her eyes weren't smiling. They were calculating, even then. I actually laughed softly at the thought. "You really fooled me, didn't you?" I said to the photo. "But you won't again." The next few days passed in slow motion. Every corner of the house reminded me of him. His old bedroom still smelled faintly like the cologne he used as a teenager. His childhood drawings were still tucked behind the wardrobe, little stick figures of me, him, and his dad holding hands. I sat on the floor and looked at one of them. Crayon lines, crooked hearts, messy handwriting that said, "Me and my mom forever." Sigh forever. Such a beautiful lie we tell as children. You know what's strange? I didn't cry. Not that time. My eyes stayed dry, but my chest ached like someone was pressing it from inside. I think I ran out of tears long ago. Instead, I started remembering all the signs, all those tiny things that looked harmless at first. How he stopped answering my calls after marrying her. How his tone changed, polite but distant. How every plan with me somehow became too much, and how she was always there, speaking for him, deciding for him, controlling everything. At first, I blamed her completely. But now, sitting there with that old drawing in my hands, I realized something painful. Maybe she didn't steal my son. Maybe he let himself be taken. That thought cut deeper than anything else. I stood up, dusted my hands, and walked to the window. Outside, the world looked the same. Cars passing, children laughing, neighbors gossiping. Life moved on. Mine just paused. But I wasn't going to stay paused forever. No, because something inside me had changed since that day she raised her hand. I was angry. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that plans. Quiet anger, steady anger, the kind that builds its strength in silence. That night I cleaned the entire house. Every room, every corner. It wasn't just cleaning, it was reclaiming. I wanted my space to remember who it belonged to. As I wiped the kitchen counter, I whispered, "They'll never take this from me." Around midnight, I made myself coffee and sat by the window again. I thought about Lucas's childhood, about how he'd come running home when it rained, shoes soaked, hair messy, yelling, "Mom, look, puddles!" And I'd scold him, pretending to be angry while hiding my smile. He'd hug me from behind, saying, "You love me even when I'm messy." Tears rolled down my cheeks at that memory. "Yes, my son," I whispered, "even now. But love isn't enough when it's not respected. I loved him, yes. But that didn't mean I'd let him, or anyone, treat me like a burden." They looked alive. I smiled. "You're not done yet," I told myself. "You've still got fire left." That was the night I made a promise. Not out loud, but deep in my soul. If they came back, I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't defend myself. I'd let them speak, and I'd listen. Because when people talk too much, the truth always slips out. And I'd be ready for it. The clock ticked toward 2 a.m. I turned off the lights, crawled into bed, and let the darkness settle around me. For the first time since that horrible day, I didn't feel powerless. I felt like something had shifted, like the story wasn't over yet. As I drifted toward sleep, one thought echoed in my mind. Maybe love doesn't disappear. Maybe it just hides behind the walls we build to protect ourselves. But even hidden love can still burn. And one day, that fire, the fire of a mother's love, her pain, her anger, it finds its way out. That's what I was waiting for now. Not an apology. Not revenge. Just truth. Because truth, when it finally arrives, doesn't knock softly. It breaks the door open. I thought silence meant peace. But I was wrong. Silence was just the pause before the storm that was already on its way. 5 days passed. 5 long days of silence. No call, no message, nothing. At first, I told myself I didn't care, that I was done waiting for people who forgot what love meant. I cleaned, cooked, kept myself busy, anything to keep my mind from wandering. But you can't silence a mother's heart. No matter how hard you try, it keeps whispering, "Maybe today he'll call." On the 5th morning, I woke up early. The sunlight was soft through the curtains, the air calm. I made coffee and sat by the window like always. The world outside was already moving. Kids going to school, shop shutters opening, a new day beginning. And yet, inside my chest, time felt frozen. Then it happened. The phone rang. That sound, it startled me. For a moment, I didn't move. My hands froze mid-air. I just stared at the screen, blinking at the name glowing there. "Lucas," my throat tightened. I let it ring twice before I picked up. "Hello?" My voice came out softer than I wanted. "Mom, it's me." That voice, familiar, careful, like he was testing the air before stepping in. I closed my eyes. So many emotions flooded me at once. Anger, love, hurt, relief. I didn't know which one to choose. "I know it's you," I said finally, trying to keep my tone even. Silence, just breathing on the other side. Then, "Mom, I want to talk." I waited. Because I knew When someone says they want to talk, they usually want to convince you, not listen to you. What do you want to talk about? I asked. About what happened the other day. So now it's the other day, not the day my wife insulted you, not the day you almost cried, just the other day. My lips tightened. Go on, he sighed. I could hear how nervous he was. I know things got out of hand. Victoria, I interrupted. Stop. Don't say her name. He went quiet. I continued. You can talk about you, about me, but not her. Not today. A small pause, then, softly, all right. I leaned back, watching the sunlight hit the photo frame on the table, the one of us when he was little. His tiny hand in mine. I felt tears prick my eyes. He said, Mom, I don't want things to be like this between us. I want to make peace. Peace. That word used to sound sweet. Now it just sounded rehearsed. Peace, Lucas? I asked quietly. Or convenience? What do you mean? He asked, confused. I chuckled, not out of humor, but exhaustion. You only come back when it suits you, when she tells you to, or when something's needed. He tried to protest. That's not true, It is, I said, cutting him off again. I'm your mother, not a stranger. I can hear the difference between guilt and love. There was silence. Then, almost whispering, he said, I'm sorry. I wanted to believe it. God, I really did. But something in his tone didn't sound right. It wasn't regret. It was fear. Why now? I asked. Why call after 5 days of silence? He hesitated. I've been thinking. I realize I should have defended you. Victoria was wrong. We both were. I didn't know how to fix it. His voice cracked slightly at the end. Maybe that was real. Or maybe you was just tired of pretending. I couldn't tell any more. Still, some part of me softened. The mother in me? She never really disappears, does she? I sighed. You can come by if you want to talk. Really? He asked, surprised. Yes, but alone. Do you understand me, Lucas? Alone. I promise. We ended the call and I sat there for a long time, the phone still in my hand, my coffee gone cold again. I should have felt relieved. I should have smiled. But I didn't. Because my gut whispered something else. This isn't an apology. This is preparation. That feeling followed me the rest of the day. Even when I tried to distract myself, it lingered, like a faint hum behind every sound. Something about his voice felt too controlled, too careful. By the time evening came, I was pacing the living room. The walls felt tighter. I kept looking at the clock, then at the window, expecting a knock. At 7:30, he arrived. Alone, just like he said. When I opened the door, my heart stopped for a second. He looked different. Tired, pale, older somehow. There were dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept either. Hi, Mom. I just nodded. Maybe he was remembering all the laughter that used to live here. We sat across from each other, him on the sofa, me on the chair. The distance between us felt heavier than the silence. He started talking, words tumbling over each other. Apologies, excuses, justifications. I didn't interrupt. I just watched him, trying to see if the boy I raised was still somewhere behind those tired eyes. He said, Victoria didn't mean to disrespect you. She thought she was helping. I should have stopped her. I should have. I raised my hand gently. Lucas, stop explaining her. He went quiet. I leaned forward. Tell me something instead. Did you think I needed to be taught how to manage my home? He came because something had gone wrong in their plan. My voice was calm but sharp. Lucas, what's really going on? He looked at me, startled. Nothing, Mom. I just want us to talk. Talk or prepare me. His forehead creased. Prepare you for what? I didn't answer. I just smiled. the kind of smile that says, I already know more than you think. He stayed for half an hour, maybe less. The whole time, my mind kept racing. Every time he shifted his eyes, every time he hesitated, I could feel the tension hiding behind his words. When he finally left, he hugged me. But it felt forced. His hands were cold. And when I closed the door behind him, I whispered to myself, and I'll find out why. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I just sat near the window, watching his car disappear down the road, my heart beating faster than it should. Something was coming. I could feel it. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of the storm. I was waiting for it. He came to make peace, but his eyes told me something else. My son wasn't here to fix things. He was here to set something in motion. The next morning felt different. Still, quiet, but heavy, like the air was holding its breath. I didn't know why, but something deep inside me whispered, today something's going to happen. I tried to brush it off. I made coffee. I opened the curtains. I even watered the plants. The sunlight looked normal, but my chest wouldn't stop tightening. Sometimes your heart knows what's coming long before your mind does. Around 9,030, the phone rang again. The sound startled me so hard I almost spilled my cup. I wiped my hands and picked up. Miller? The voice was deep, polite, unfamiliar. Yes, this is her. My name is Benjamin Foster. I'm an attorney. I'd like to speak with you about an urgent matter related to your home. My heart skipped a beat. My home? I repeated. What about it? Could I come by this morning? It's important. Something in his tone made my stomach twist. Calm, professional, but also cautious, like a man walking on thin ice. I hesitated, then said quietly, all right, come by at 10. I hung up and stood there in the middle of my kitchen, staring at nothing. A lawyer? Why a lawyer? What could possibly be urgent about my house? For the next half hour, I tried to calm myself. I fixed my hair, changed my apron for a clean blouse, not because I cared how I looked, but because I wanted to look strong. I didn't know what was coming, but I refused to appear weak again. Right at 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I opened it, and there he was. A man in his 40s, gray suit, neat tie, kind eyes but serious face. He held a black briefcase and a folder under his arm. Good morning, Mrs. Miller, he said politely. I'm Benjamin Foster. I nodded, letting him in. He stepped inside carefully, like someone entering a sacred space. Please, have a seat, I said, motioning toward the sofa. My hands were trembling, but I hid them behind my back. He sat, opened his briefcase, and looked at me with that kind of expression lawyers have when they know something you don't, something you won't like hearing. Mrs. Miller, he began softly, I came because I received a rather unusual inquiry 2 weeks ago. Inquiry? I asked. From who? He opened the folder. A woman named Victoria Chase. For a moment, the name didn't even register. Then it hit me like a slap. My daughter-in-law. I froze. Victoria? She contacted my office pretending to be acting on your behalf. She said you were unwell, mentally and emotionally unstable after your husband's passing, and that she needed to know if there was a way for your son and her to take control of your property for your own safety. My stomach turned. My throat went dry. I stared at him, unable to breathe. She said what? I whispered. Benjamin's eyes softened. She claimed you were showing signs of mental decline, that you couldn't manage finances or household decisions anymore. I couldn't hold it in. I started laughing, not from amusement, but from disbelief. That kind of laugh that comes out shaky, painful, sharp. Ha! She said that about me? He nodded. I know. That's why I didn't proceed with anything. Something about her story didn't feel right. So I asked her for documents, medical certificates, proof of incompetence, anything. She never provided them. I swallowed hard. My heart was racing so fast I could hear it. So what did you do? He leaned forward slightly. I did some digging, Mrs. Miller, and what I found, you need to hear it. He took out another folder, thicker, older, and placed it on the table between us. Your daughter-in-law has done this before. The room went silent. What do you mean? I whispered. He opened the file. Inside were papers, photographs, copies of legal forms. 4 years ago, she was married to another man, a widower named Arthur Gales. He was older, in his late 60s. 6 months after the marriage, he was declared mentally unfit to handle his own finances. Victoria took full control of his accounts, his home, everything. My hands went cold. She then sold his property, Benjamin continued, his voice calm but heavy. Transferred the money to her name. 2 months later, she filed for divorce. The man was placed in a nursing home, where he died a year later. I covered my mouth with both hands. My eyes burned with tears I didn't want to show. She did that? He nodded slowly. Yes. And that's not the only case. There are at least 2 others. Different names, same pattern. Older men, widowed, lonely, vulnerable. She gains their trust, convinces them she's helping, then isolates them, takes over everything, and leaves them with nothing. I felt like the walls were closing in on me. My mind was spinning. I could barely hear him over the rush of blood in my ears. I whispered, almost to myself, and now she's doing it again. He looked at me, eyes full of sympathy. Yes. With your son. I shook my head, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. My son doesn't know. He can't know. He wouldn't. She's manipulative, he interrupted gently. Women like her know how to make people believe anything. She's probably already convinced him that she's protecting you. I pressed my palms to my face. The sobs came quietly, shaking my whole body. I tried to speak but couldn't. Benjamin waited. Then he said softly, That's why I came, because when she contacted me, I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't let her hurt another family. I wiped my tears and looked up. What do I do now? First, he said, opening another folder, you need to protect what's yours. Make sure your home is legally sealed under your name. If she's planning to take over, she'll need proof that you're unfit. So you'll need medical documents certifying that you're in full mental health. And we'll also prepare a will, something she can't contest. I nodded slowly. My tears had dried, replaced by a strange calm, a kind of fire. I'll do whatever it takes. He slid a small card across the table. This has my number. I'll help you. No charge. Call me anytime. For a second, I didn't even know what to say. Finally, I whispered, Thank you. I didn't know there were still good people left. He gave a faint smile. You're not alone, Mrs. Miller. Not anymore. When he left, I locked the door and sat on the sofa. The house was silent again, but not like before. This silence was full of noise. My heartbeat, my thoughts, my anger. Victoria wasn't just cruel, she was dangerous. A woman who smiled while planning to destroy families. I looked around my house. Every photo, every corner, every chair. My husband's memory lived here. My life lived here. And I whispered to the empty room, You'll never take this from me, not while I'm breathing. I wiped my face, straightened my shoulders, and looked at the window where sunlight hit the floor. I felt ready. She thought I was just a lonely old woman she could outsmart. But what she didn't know was that I'd just met someone who could destroy her plans, piece by piece. 2 days after the lawyer's visit, the house felt different, not quieter, stronger. Every sound, every shadow, every heartbeat in these walls seemed to whisper, You're not alone anymore. I'd spent the last 48 hours doing what Benjamin advised, collecting my papers, locking up every document, and signing the first draft of my will. My mind, for once, was clear. It felt strange after weeks of heartbreak to finally feel in control again. And then, like clockwork, the phone rang. I didn't even have to look at the screen. I already knew who it was. Mom, Lucas. I took a deep breath, steadied my voice and answered. Yes, Lucas. He sounded softer this time. Almost cheerful. That fake kind of cheerful people use when they're trying to cover something. Victoria and I were talking, he began, and we thought maybe we could have dinner together, just the three of us. You know, start over. I just stared at the wall, listening to the faint ticking of the clock. Start over. Those words used to mean forgiveness. Now, they sounded like a setup. Still, I smiled to myself. That's a nice idea, Lucas, I said calmly. When? He sounded relieved. Tomorrow night. I'll pick you up. Perfect, I said. I'll be ready. He didn't know, of course, that the lawyer and I had already made our own plans. Benjamin would be nearby, waiting just in case. I just wanted the truth in her own voice. After I hung up, I sat quietly for a while. My hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from adrenaline. I looked at the photo of my husband on the mantel and whispered, Wish me luck, love. Tomorrow we end this. The next evening I dressed carefully. Not fancy, not plain, just simple, neat, dignified, the kind of look that says, I'm not here to beg. I wore my pearl earrings, the ones my husband gave me on our 10th anniversary. They always gave me courage. At 7 p.m., Lucas's car pulled up. I saw him through the window before he even honked. My heart ached at the sight. My little boy, all grown, driving me to a house where I'd be tested. When I stepped out, he smiled nervously. You look nice, Ma. I smiled back. You too. The ride was mostly silent. The air between us felt thick with unspoken words. Every time he opened his mouth, he'd stop himself. I didn't push. I just watched. Mothers don't need explanations. We see the truth in their faces. When we reached their house, she was already waiting at the door. Victoria, her smile. Oh, that smile. Too wide, too perfect. The kind that hides venom behind the teeth. Patricia, she said sweetly, I'm so glad you came. Of course, I said with equal sweetness. It's been too long. Her eyes flickered like she was trying to gauge my tone. I knew that look, the look of someone who doesn't trust your calmness. The dinner table was already set. Candlelight, soft music, perfectly folded napkins. Everything about it screamed performance. We sat down. She poured wine. Lucas started talking about nothing. Weather, neighbors, meaningless chatter. I played along, nodding, smiling faintly, pretending not to notice the tension under every word. Halfway through dinner, she finally leaned back in her chair, swirling her glass. You know, she began, her tone dripping with false concern, I've been thinking a lot about you, Patricia. You live all alone in that big house. It must be hard. I smiled. Oh, not at all. I've learned to enjoy my own company. Her smile tightened. Still, it's not safe. I mean, you're not young anymore. What if something happens? I took a slow sip of my drink. If something happens, I said softly, I'll handle it, like I always have. Lucas glanced at her. A subtle cue, as if telling her to go easy. She ignored it. Pretending to laugh, we were actually thinking. Maybe it's time you moved in with us. It'll be easier. We can help with the house, bills, everything. That's very kind of you, I said slowly, but I love my home. It's full of memories. I don't think I could leave it. Her tone sharpened just a bit. But that's the problem, isn't it? You're holding on to the past. It's not good for your mental health. But instead, I tilted my head and smiled. Oh, you don't have to worry about my mental health, dear. I just had it evaluated. Doctor says I'm sharper than ever. Her fork froze mid-air. Lucas looked up in confusion. I'm sorry? She asked. I smiled wider. Yes, official certificate and everything. Apparently my memory's perfect. I even remember conversations word for word. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I could see the wheels turning in her head. She knew something was off. Lucas tried to cut the tension. Mom, let's not talk about that stuff right now. I turned to Victoria, my voice calm but cutting. You know what's funny? My lawyer said something interesting yesterday. Apparently, a woman with your name has quite a colorful past. She froze. Her wine glass trembled slightly in her hand. I I don't know what you mean. Oh, I think you do, I said softly, leaning forward just enough to make her uncomfortable. Married a man named Arthur Gales, didn't you? And two others before that? Her eyes widened, then quickly darted to Lucas. His face turned pale. What is she talking about? He asked, panicked. Victoria stammered. She's lying. She's making things up. She's... Enough, I said, my voice calm but firm. Don't insult me by pretending. I know exactly what you're doing. And this? I gestured to the perfect dinner, the soft music, the fake smiles. This was never about family. It was about control. The room fell silent. Victoria's mask cracked for the first time. Her lips trembled, her eyes cold and furious. Lucas looked between us, completely lost. Dinner was lovely, I said with a small smile. But next time, choose honesty for dessert. And I walked toward the door. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking, but my voice stayed steady. Before leaving, I turned one last time and said softly, Consider this your first. I closed the door behind me. The night air hit my face, cool and freeing. My car was waiting. Benjamin sitting inside, nodding as I got in. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. He just smiled faintly and said, You handled it perfectly. I looked out the window, at the house growing smaller behind me. My reflection in the glass smiled back, tired but proud. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a woman taking back her story. They thought I came for dinner. But what I really came for was the truth. And that night, I tasted it first. The next morning, the world outside looked brighter than usual, not because the sun was stronger, but because for the first time in months, I felt awake. Last night's dinner had changed everything. The moment I mentioned those names, Arthur Gales, the past marriages, the lies, that flicker of fear in Victoria's eyes, that single second when her mask slipped and the real woman beneath showed through, cold, ruthless, afraid. That look told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't just cruel, she was dangerous. When I got home that night, I didn't cry. I didn't sit by the window or stare at old photos. I brewed tea, turned on every light, and opened a notebook. The front page read only one word, evidence. Sigh. It was time to stop feeling and start fighting. By morning, I called Benjamin. He answered on the first ring. Good morning, Mrs. Miller, he said. How did it go? She knows. I know, I replied, my voice calm. And now she'll move faster. Then we will too, he said firmly. I've already reached out to a few people connected to her past, old landlords, neighbors, and, he paused, one of her previous victims' families. He's been looking for her ever since she disappeared after the divorce. He's willing to talk. I felt a shiver run through me. Set it up, I said quietly. The sooner, the better. That afternoon, we met in Benjamin's office. A tall man walked in, mid-30s, tired eyes, the kind that had seen too much too young. He held a small box in his hands. Mrs. Miller, he said, his voice heavy, my father was one of her victims. I nodded slowly, unsure what to say. I've learned to live with the law, but not with the lies. He opened the box and pulled out photos, pictures of Victoria, smiling with an older man, their wedding, their new home. Then another photo, her leaving with suitcases, a different man waiting in the car. She had it planned from day one, Daniel said. Within 6 months, she had full access to his accounts. Within a year, he was in a home. She sold everything. My father died believing she loved him. He paused, eyes watering slightly. But the worst part? She didn't even attend the funeral. The room went silent. My heart ached for him, for all of them. Benjamin asked gently, Do you still have the documents from that time? Every last one. He handed Benjamin a folder. I kept them for years. I knew she'd do it again some day. I reached across the table, touching his hand lightly. You were right, I said softly. And now we'll stop her. That night, Benjamin and I spread the papers across his desk. Legal files, bank transfers, property deeds, the same pattern over and over, the same handwriting, the same lies. It was like watching a spider's web stretch across lives, all leading back to her. As I flipped through the papers, one detail caught my eye. Benjamin, I said, pointing at a document, look at the address. He leaned closer. That's her previous apartment, the same one she listed when she applied for your son's joint mortgage. I let out a low laugh, half disbelief, half bitterness. She didn't even bother changing the details. That's how confident she is. She smiled faintly. Overconfidence always leaves fingerprints. We stayed up late that night, building the file piece by piece. Every lie became a page, every deception a nail in her plan's coffin. By 1 a.m., the table was covered in evidence. Benjamin looked at me, tired but proud. You've done well, Mrs. Miller. I shook my head. No, I said softly, I just stopped doing nothing. That night, I went home, sat in my living room, and stared at the house around me. The walls felt alive, like they were listening. My husband's photo seemed to smile faintly in the lamplight. I whispered, We're close, love, so close. The next day, I made a list. Every name, every place, every date. The teacher and me, the organizer. The mother came alive again. Lucas hadn't called since the dinner. I figured he was probably confused, caught between her lies and my truth. I didn't blame him, not yet. But soon the truth would hit him whether he wanted it or not. Midway through the day, Benjamin called again. Good news, he said. I've managed to reach one more person, a woman named Laura. She used to work with Victoria. She says she has proof of fake IDs, bank accounts, even photos. I exhaled slowly. When can we meet her? Tomorrow morning, he said. The next day, Laura arrived, nervous, fidgeting, looking over her shoulder. She was maybe 40, with a trembling voice and the kind of eyes that had seen too much fear. She's not who she says she is, Laura said firmly. Victoria isn't even her real name. It's Melissa Carter. She changes it every few years. New IDs, new states, new stories. Always the same goal, money and control. I felt my stomach twist again. Does my son know any of this? Laura shook her head. No, she's good at hiding things. She probably told him you're unstable. That's how she always starts. Makes you look weak so she can look like a savior. I clenched my fists. My voice trembled. She underestimated the wrong woman. Benjamin smiled faintly. She always does. We spent hours going through the details. Names, addresses, transactions. Each line on paper was another piece of her mask peeling away. By the end, I had a full file, solid proof. When we were done, Laura hugged me tightly. Be careful, she whispered. Women like her. When cornered, they bite. I smiled faintly. I've been bitten before. That night, I sat by my window again, but not in sorrow. But this time, I wouldn't plead. I wouldn't cry. I'd show him everything, the truth, in black and white. And if that broke his heart, then so be it. Sometimes truth has to break you before it sets you free. She thought I'd crumble under her lies. But what she didn't know was that I'd already built a truth sharp enough to cut every thread of her web. It was raining the day I decided to end it all. Not my life, but the lies. The sky looked heavy, swollen with clouds, almost as if it knew something was about to break. I stood at my window, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass, and whispered to myself, today we finish this. He had that same calm expression he always wore, the kind that makes you feel like no storm can shake him. You ready? He asked quietly. I nodded. More than ever. The plan was simple and cruelly poetic. Lucas and Victoria had called, asking to talk things out. This time, they wanted to come to my house. Of course, they didn't know that Benjamin would be there, or that the living room table would be lined with documents, recordings, and photographs waiting to tear their lives apart. When I opened the door that evening, they stood there like two actors who'd rehearsed their smiles. Too calm. Even I could feel it. Victoria walked in, scanning the room like she owned it. Her eyes fell on the neat stack of papers on the table. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "What's all this?" she asked lightly. "Thought we could go through them together." She laughed, that fake, practiced laugh that grated on my nerves. "You're funny, Patricia." I didn't respond. I just looked at her, long enough for the silence to get uncomfortable. Then I said softly, "Please, sit." I made tea. Benjamin stepped out from the hallway then, quiet, professional, holding a folder in one hand. Victoria's smile dropped instantly. "Who's this?" Lucas frowned. "Mom?" "This," I said evenly, "is Benjamin Foster, my lawyer." The room froze. Benjamin nodded politely. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Miller." Lucas blinked, confused. "Mom, why would you need a lawyer?" I took a deep breath. "Because, my dear, your wife tried to take my house. And my life." Victoria's face went pale. "That's ridiculous," she said quickly, forcing a laugh. "She's clearly confused." Mush. "Lucas, she's making up stories." "Am I?" I interrupted softly. "Then perhaps you can explain these." I gestured to the table. Benjamin opened the folder and began laying out papers. Property records, old marriage certificates, bank statements, photos. Each one hit the table like a thunderclap. Lucas leaned forward, confused. "What is all this?" Benjamin said calmly. "These are official records, Mr. Miller, of your wife's past, her previous marriages, her financial transfers, and her fraudulent property acquisitions." Lucas shook his head. "That's not possible. There must be some mistake." "Oh, there's no mistake," I said quietly. "It's her pattern. She finds a man, isolates him, gains control, takes everything, and disappears." "You're just the next one, Lucas." Victoria stood up suddenly. "This is insane. He's lying. She's trying to poison you against me." I leaned back in my chair, voice calm. "You told me once you wanted to teach me how to manage my house. But, darling, I've managed everything my whole life. You really thought you could outsmart me in my own home?" She glared at me, her mask cracking. "You have no proof." "Actually, we do." He pressed play on a small recorder. Her voice filled the room, the conversation from the dinner, crystal clear. "It's not good for your mental health. You should let us help with your finances." Then another clip. Laura's recorded statement, naming her real identity. Victoria's face drained of color. Lucas's eyes went wide, his breath catching. He looked at her. "Victoria, what is this?" She shook her head desperately. "It's fake. They're lying, Lucas. She's doing this to ruin us." "Enough," he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The sound echoed through the house. "Stop lying." The silence that followed was deafening. Only the rain tapping on the windows broke it. Victoria's lips trembled. Her eyes darted between us like a trapped animal. Then her expression changed. Anger, raw and unfiltered. She turned on me. "You think you've won, old woman? You think this changes anything? He'll still leave you. He'll always choose me." I smiled softly. "Maybe. But now he'll at least know who he's choosing." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Just a sharp inhale, then a scream. A pure, furious scream that shook her entire body. And then, like a storm that had finally spent itself, she collapsed back into her chair, shaking her head. Lucas stared at her, tears filling his eyes. You used me, he whispered. You used us. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence said it all. Benjamin quietly gathered the papers. I'll take these to the authorities, he said. It's enough to file charges. Victoria shot up, panicked. You can't. I'll ruin you all. But Lucas stood first, his voice trembling. Ooh. You've already done enough. And then, for the first time in weeks, he turned to me. His face, my boy's face, was full of regret, pain, love, and shame all at once. Mom, he whispered, I'm sorry. I wanted to cry. I wanted to hold him and say it was okay. Not until the storm truly passed. Victoria's phone buzzed on the table, a notification flashing across the screen. Benjamin glanced at it, then looked at me. Looks like she's been in contact with 2 other names. We'll make sure this doesn't happen again. I nodded faintly. When they left, Benjamin with the evidence, Lucas walking out in silence, and Victoria in handcuffs by the end of the night. The clock ticked softly in the background. I looked up at my husband's photo and whispered, It's over. Then I broke. Tears poured out. For surviving, for finally being heard. Later that night, as the rain slowed, Lucas returned alone. He stood in the doorway, eyes red. Can I come in, Mom? I nodded. He stepped forward, hesitating like a child again. Then he hugged me, tight, desperate, shaking. I'm so sorry, he whispered again. I didn't see it. I didn't want to. I stroked his hair gently, tears falling onto his shoulder. I know, son, but you see it now. That's enough. We stayed like that for a long time, mother and son holding on to what was almost lost. The storm had finally passed, but the silence it left behind wasn't emptiness. It was peace. And for the first time, that peace felt like home again. The morning after everything ended, the world felt still. For months my life had been chaos, storms, betrayal, shouting, silence. But that day, it was as if the world paused to take a breath. The rain had washed the air clean. The sunlight through the curtains looked warmer somehow, softer, almost forgiving. I stood by the window with a cup of tea, watching the leaves sparkle with dew, and whispered to myself, It's finally over. But even as I said it, a small voice inside me whispered back, No, it's just beginning. Because peace, I realized, doesn't come when the fight ends. It comes when you stop carrying the pain. That morning, Lucas came over again. No phone call, no warning. Just a soft knock on the door. The same kind of knock he used to give when he was a boy, after breaking something he wasn't supposed to touch. When I opened the door, he looked tired, pale, but somehow lighter, like someone who had finally put down a heavy burden. Hi, Mom, he said softly. Come in. He hesitated at the door before entering, his eyes scanning the familiar walls like they were new to him. Maybe, in a way, they were, because for the first time he wasn't coming in as a man who thought he knew better. He was coming in as my son again. We sat in the kitchen, the same table where everything began. I poured tea for both of us. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was gentle, healing. After a long pause, he finally spoke. I don't even know what to say. I smiled faintly. Then don't say anything. Just sit. Be here. He nodded, his hands wrapped around the cup, trembling slightly. I should have believed you, he said finally. You tried to warn me so many times, and I kept defending her. I thought you just didn't like her. I sighed softly. Love makes us blind, Lucas. Even mothers forget that sometimes. He looked up, his eyes wet. How did you know? How did you stay so calm? I smiled a little. Because I've already lived through bigger storms. Your father taught me that when you've built a home with love, no one can destroy it unless you let them in. He lowered his gaze. I let her in. I reached out, placing my hand over his. And now you've let her go. That's what matters. For a long moment neither of us spoke. The sound of the clock filled the silence. Steady, rhythmic, peaceful. It felt like time itself was breathing again. After a while he asked quietly, "What'll happen to her?" I shrugged softly. "Benjamin will handle that. She'll face what she's done." Then, looking at him gently, I added, "But that's not our fight anymore. Our fight was for truth, and we won." He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." And love doesn't wait for permission to forgive. He laughed through his tears, shaking his head. "You're unbelievable, you know that? I've been told," I said, smiling. He stayed the whole day, fixing little things around the house, helping me with groceries, talking like the boy I used to know. Every moment felt like a piece of our bond stitching itself back together. When evening came, we sat on the porch watching the sky turn gold. The air was cool, the neighborhood quiet, the kind of peace that feels earned. Lucas sighed, looking at me. "You know, I thought I was protecting her all this time. Turns out, it was you who was protecting me." I smiled softly. "I don't deserve you." I looked at the horizon and whispered, "Just promise me one thing. Anything. Next time life tries to teach you something." I paused, smiling faintly. "Ooh, make sure you know who the teacher really is." He laughed, a real laugh this time. I hadn't heard that sound in years. It filled my chest with warmth. The sun dipped lower, painting the world in orange and pink. I thought about my husband, his strength, his wisdom, his voice. I hoped, wherever he was, he could see this moment. See our son finally home again. For the first time since he passed, I didn't feel alone. I felt surrounded by love, by peace, by everything I'd fought for. That night, after Lucas left, I sat in the living room again. The house was quiet, but this time
it didn't echo. It breathed. I looked around at the photos. Our wedding picture, Lucas's first birthday, the family holidays. Every frame told a story of survival. And I realized something. Every tear, every prayer, every small victory. This wasn't just where I lived. This was where I became. I stood up, touched the old rug by my feet, the same one where they'd once dropped their bags, and whispered, "I told you, this home doesn't break easily." The silence felt like a hug. Before going to bed, I glanced once more at my husband's photo. "You'll be proud," I whispered. He came back, and maybe it was just my imagination, but the photo seemed to glow a little in the dim light. Or maybe that was just my heart finally letting go. As I lay down, I thought of everything that had happened. The betrayal, the pain, the fight, the truth. It all led here, to peace. And in that peace, I learned the hardest, most beautiful lesson of all. That no matter how much life tries to break you, love always finds a way to rebuild what's left. Because sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go of anger, of fear, of what could have been, so that something new can take its place. No nightmares, no tears, just warmth, calm, and gratitude. And as I drifted off, my last thought was simple but clear. I thought I lost my son to a stranger's lies. But maybe that stranger was the lesson both of us needed to find our way back home. But in the end, it was life that taught her, and me, that no lesson is stronger than a mother's love.
If this story touched you, even a little, leave a comment, my dear. And remember, you deserve peace, love, and respect. Take care of your heart. I'll see you in the next story.